Hello Bookish friends, welcome to my June wrap-up part 1. In this video, I will talk about the books that I finished in the first half of June. And like I did in my previous wrap-ups, I will insert the clips that I've recorded very soon after I finish those works, so that my reviews about the book would be fresh. Today is the 3rd of June and I finished my first book of the month, which was an e-arc that I received from the book Sirens. The name of the book is Complicated Strangers by Eliis Summers. In this contemporary romance book, Mia, a Navajoan Native American, one day learns that her husband, who has been working in the Brazilian consulate, is found to be missing after an attack to the embassy, and during trying to find out what happened to her husband, she encounters an ex-CIA agent and right now working as a intel transfer for the FBI, Grayson. Together they try to find out what happened to Mia's husband and whether he is alive or not. I have mixed feelings about this book. First of all, like you can guess from the summary of the plot, the main plot was very interesting, and I really wanted to find out what really happened to Mia's husband. And additionally, the writing style was very clear, and it was not very complicated. I also liked how the characters were complex and somewhat morally gray. On the other hand, I have to say the characters acted so unintelligently, and it actually made me feel annoyed with the decisions that they made. And enabling the teenage daughter of Grayson to be a part of this adventure was very worrying. Seemed very unrealistic because Grayson was a caring father, and it was unacceptable that he would put his daughter at risk. And some other decisions during their search made me feel really angry with the characters at some points. The romance aspect of the book was not bad, but the fact that Grayson kept calling Mia princess made me mad, because I really hate when the male character calls the female character princess as a term for endearment. I find it both unimaginative as well as a bit degrading. So I failed to feel the connection between the two leads in the romantic scenes. I gave Complicated Strangers by Eliis Summers a 5 out of 10. Today is the 5th of June and I decided to DNF one book and finished another book yesterday. The book that I decided to DNF was The Dance Tree by Kiran, Millwood, Hardgrave. First of all, I want to say that this is not a permanent DNF, but a temporary one. This book was the book club pick for Fear of Missing Out book club, co-hosted by Jack, Eliis, and Gemma. This book tells two different parallel stories. In one story, the woman in a French village one day decide to dance, and they could not stop dancing. And at the same time, we follow the adventures of a married woman who's pregnant but have suffered many miscarriages in her previous pregnancies, and her relationship with her husband, her mother-in-law, and especially her sister-in-law, who has been banished from the society for a crime that she committed. And our heroine tries to discover this crime. I actually thought this was a fairly decent book. The reason that I temporarily decided to DNF this book was that because I was very much irritated by the audiobook narration. The narrator voice was very pleasant, and she spoke in a very melodical way. All of the sentences were spoken with the same rhythm, which made it very hard to differentiate for me. If I could find an ebook or a physical copy of this book, I would like to try it again. The book that I finished yesterday was the book for Books of Alfred Hitchcock project for the month of May, which was The House of Dr. Edwardes by Frances Beeding. This book was adapted into an Alfred Hitchcock movie in 1947. In this book, we follow the adventures of an apprentice female doctor who comes to the mental asylum led by Dr. Edwardes to assist him. As she goes there, she finds out that Dr. Edwardes has taken a vacation. Mental asylum is now led by Dr. Munchausen. Aside from the 7 mildly dangerous patients, there exists a very dangerous patient who has been accompanied by Dr. Munchausen when he came to the asylum. During that trip, the patient kills the coachman. He is stopped by this Dr. Munchausen. I have to say, this book pleasantly surprised me. Although I watched the movie, I did not remember it much. But as I read the book, I remembered some things. The book was a bit different from the movie, and like the original book, much better. The plot twist and the mystery is very good. Although the hints are given from the beginning, after we find out about the plot twist, it then becomes a very good thriller book. And I have to say, I really loved the characterization of the patients. I really liked how each patient was defined so differently. Additionally, I really liked the writing style. I did not feel like that I was reading a book that was written in 1920s. The language is quite modern. My only very small complaint about this book was that the character of Constance could have been defined much better. Frances Beeding is a pseudonym for 2 male authors. It was very clear that Frances was written by male authors. Aside from this very small annoyance, I thought it was an excellent thriller book, and I gave The House of Dr. Edwardes by Frances Beeding an 8 out of 10. Today is the 8th of June, and I finished the audiobook that I was listening for a prompt in Golden Girls Readathon, the Hollywood Canteen, where the greatest generation danced with the most beautiful girls in the world. I listened to this nonfiction for the prompt of a book with girls in the title. And the book, written by Lisa Mitchell and Bruce Torrence, is about the Hollywood Canteen, which functioned from 1942 to 1945 for the aim of entertaining servicemen who were going to the war to fight in the Pacific. And in this canteen, they were entertained by and also danced with some of the biggest stars in the country. And the book tells about the story of this canteen from its foundation until its end in the year 1945. After the World War II ended. This was a very interesting listening experience for me. The story of how the Hollywood Canteen was founded and how big it became after its initial foundation was really interesting to hear about. Up until I saw this audiobook in my application, I never knew the existence of such a entertainment place, and I was very much impressed by the involvement of so many stars, especially Bette Davis, who was the co-founder of this place. So it was quite an informative nonfiction book for me, and I gave this short nonfiction book 7 out of 10. Today is the 9th of June, and I finished the audiobook that I was buddy reading with Amy at Sobek, which was The Millhouse Murders by Yukito Ajatsuji. We previously buddy read the first book in the series, which is The Dekagan House Murders by the same author with Amy again. And we both enjoyed that book very much, and we wanted to buddy read the second book in the series when the English edition came out. In this book, a character from the first book, Kiyoshi Shimada, arrives at a house in which 3 mills are present and tries to discover the mystery behind a man's disappearance and 2 murders. Exactly 1 year ago, this date is significant because the same guests do come to the mill house to appreciate the works of Juniwa Iesi, a very famous artist. And since it became a tradition for the house owner, which is also the artist's son, to show the private collection to the people who are very special in his father's life. The story is told from the 2 timelines. One exactly 1 year ago when the murders happened, and the second timeline is the present timeline in which Shimada investigates what is happening as new bodies also turn up. Like the first book, I loved the reading experience of the book very much, and I really admired the author's cleverness and the way he structured his mystery. Also, how the hints were given out to the solution of the mystery all throughout the book. Amy and I actually guessed some things, but the way these details were constructed still made it a very good plot point in the book. Like the first book, the characters were well defined, and some of them were quite likable. However, what made this book even better for me, the first book was actually an homage to And Then There Were None, and it was actually a twist on the plot of And Then There Were None. This time, the plot twist was still excellent. The mystery was an original one, which made it even more special for me. That's why I rated The Millhouse Murders by Yukito Ajatsuji even higher, and I gave the book 9 out of 10. Today is the 10th of June, and I finished a graphic novel today, which was Heartstopper Volume 4 by Eliis Oseman. By reading this volume, I am now up to date in the Heartstopper series. The plot in this graphic novel follows the events after the 3rd volume, and we are now faced with the problems that Nikki and Charlie face after announcing their relationship to the public. And this graphic novel especially contains the themes of mental health, eating disorders, and other social pressures felt by the teenagers of any gender. I was very impressed by how the issues that can be risky to deal with was dealt in this graphic novel. And I was especially pleased with the fact that the underlying theme of this graphic novel was that when we have a problem, we need the support of different people in our surroundings, including our family, siblings, friends, teachers, and other professionals, not just limited to the special one in our lives. Since this was the 4th edition in the series, I was familiar and really liked all of the characters and wanted the best for them, not just our couple. Maybe because of its target value, I found the graphic novel didactic at some parts, but still I thought it was a very good story, and I gave Heartstopper Volume 4 by Eliis Oseman an 8 out of 10. Today is the 12th of June, and I finished the audiobook that I was buddy reading with Nikki at Readathon and Naomi at Naomi's bookshelf, which was Susuzluk by Nesbo. This was the 11th book in the Harry Hole series, and we have been buddy reading the series with Nikki and Naomi. In this book, there's a time break between the last book and this book. A new type of killer emerges in Oslo, and this killer attacks a woman, kills them, and then drinks their blood like a vampire. One of Harry's best friend, Catherine, is in the lead of the investigation. And she tries to uncover this mystery with her team, while Harry helps her investigation with a team of his own. Many of the characters from the previous books do appear in this book, and we follow Harry and Catherine trying to solve this murder while dealing with the problems in their own private lives. This was again a great buddy reading experience. This time I guessed the killer correctly. Aside from this additional joy, I'm really enjoying this series because of its background. We knew most of the secondary characters from their past and guessed how they would react in some situations, and to feel with them as well. Although Harry has his faults, he's a beloved character and a very clever character. Especially in this book, the relationship between Harry and his stepson Oleg impressed me a lot. Mystery was interesting because I can read some gory details. It was additionally interesting to know about some of the details of a vampirist, which is a term that I had never heard of before. Structure of the mystery was more complex in the previous books, but it was still a very engaging and exciting thriller story. I gave Susuzluk by Nesbo an 8 out of 10. Today is the 13th of June, and I finished the book that I was reading for my real life book club, which was Doppler by Erlend Loe. This book was not on my TBR because the book hadn't been chosen at the time that I filmed that video. And when I saw this book on the list, maybe because it was short, I've decided to try it, although it felt so much out of my comfort zone. In this book, we follow the adventures of a man who decides to live in the forest after his father's death. So far, he has been a very successful employee, a very successful husband, a very successful student, and a very successful social being in general. Follow I think 5 months that he spends in a tent in woods, first with a baby deer whom he killed his mother, and then gradually with the people whom he socializes with in order to eat and drink to survive. Because I had low expectations, I was not surprised that I didn't find the book very good. But still, I gave it 6 out of 10 because it was really easy to follow the book, and the things that he does were sort of interesting. On the other hand, because I've never understood the concept of living in wilderness without having any sort of goal or aim, I had a hard time understanding what the man was doing. Maybe it was a criticism of this character, I don't know, that he sort of had a small social circle of his own, because as a human being, I think he needed to socialize, but after a while he felt bored of this social life too. He wasn't self-sufficient, and he had to steal to survive. This was a first book in a series, and I am certainly not going to continue with this series. So I gave Doppler by Erlend Loe a 6 out of 10. The second book that I finished today was an audiobook, which was the June pick for Christiefest. In this book, we follow the adventures of four young people who are trying to investigate murder of their two friends, and they suspect international espionage. And there is a very mysterious Seven Dials society, and one of Agatha Christie's detectives, Inspector Battles, also tries to solve the mystery of this society along with our four young adventurers. Although I was late to the Christiefest discussion, I am very glad that I decided to listen to this audiobook. Book is not the best book that I've read so far in June, but I've enjoyed listening to this book so much. I have mentioned many times, writing of Agatha Christie feels like a cozy home to me. I felt this conformity all throughout the book. Additionally, there was a witch which is present in the earlier books of Agatha Christie, in earlier works of Hercule Poirot, for example. I chuckled a lot while listening to this book. There were really good jokes, as well as very valid criticism of the society. Mystery was quite interesting. It wasn't very shocking, but I had no idea who the killer was. I plan to read more from Inspector Battles series because he's a very cool detective. I gave The Seven Dials Mystery by Agatha Christie an 8 out of 10. So those were the 8 books that I finished, and one book that I DNF'd in the first half of June. Please comment down below, have you read any of the books that I mentioned in this video? And if you're a new viewer, first of all, welcome. Please like and subscribe. Hope to see you very soon. Bye. As for Turkish word of the day, I'm going to choose Canteen. Canteen means canteen in Turkish, and Canteen is our Turkish word of the day. Have a good day.